Here's something that genuinely doesn't add up. Hollywood Video adopted DVDs faster than Blockbuster, generated more revenue per location, and grew faster. Yet, it still went completely bankrupt years before Blockbuster did. Clearly, being the better-run company didn't save anyone in this industry. Today, we'll explore what truly mattered, and the answer reveals a harsh business lesson. Stick around, as the conclusion of this story is a masterclass in how not to grow a company, even one that was seemingly doing everything right along the way. Let's dive in. Let's rewind to 1988. A 28-year-old entrepreneur named Mark Waddles was managing small video rental shops around Portland, Oregon, and he had a theory. What if, instead of a cramped little store with just a few hundred tapes, he built something enormous? A true superstore stocked with virtually every title available, open around the clock, and styled with bold, memorable neon branding. This theory became Hollywood Video, and it was an immediate success. While Blockbuster dominated the South and East Coasts, Hollywood Video steadily established a presence across the Pacific Northwest and expanded from there. The company went public to fund rapid growth, acquired smaller regional chains, and within a few short years, had locations in 8 states. As DVDs began to replace VHS tapes, Hollywood Video didn't hesitate. They aggressively embraced the new format, while Blockbuster moved noticeably slower. By 2000, Hollywood Video had grown from 5 stores to over 1,600, surpassed $1 billion in revenue, and individual stores generated close to $900,000 each, the highest average in the entire rental industry. It became the second largest video rental chain in America, built entirely on its own merits with no franchises. By 2004, Hollywood Video had become successful enough that Blockbuster decided the simplest way to handle the competition was to buy it out. Blockbuster made an offer worth around $700 million. When Hollywood Video's leadership resisted, Blockbuster escalated to a genuine hostile takeover attempt, quietly purchasing shares to force the deal through, backed by financing from an investor known for supporting one of the most disastrous corporate takeovers in American history. Here's the twist. Hollywood Video didn't end up in Blockbuster's hands at all. A smaller competitor, Movie Gallery, swooped in with a higher offer, somewhere between $850 and $860 million, and won the deal instead. It's quite remarkable that a smaller company was able to outbid an industry giant for a larger, faster-growing rival. On paper, this seems like a huge victory for Movie Gallery. However, the reality was more complicated. It resembled a small boat trying to tow a much larger ship with a rope made entirely of borrowed money. Here's what the acquisition actually looked like beneath the headlines. Movie Gallery didn't have nearly enough cash on hand to fund the purchase. This was a leveraged buyout. Most of the purchase price came from borrowed funds. Additionally, Movie Gallery agreed to take on roughly $350 million of Hollywood Video's existing debt as part of the deal. Almost overnight, a company that had been operating its own smaller, profitable chain suddenly found itself managing thousands of new stores while also carrying a massive new debt burden. The timing could not have been worse. Redbox had just introduced dollar rental kiosks outside grocery stores and pharmacies. Netflix, already thriving with its mail-order DVD service, was moving toward a streaming future. Consumers were also becoming accustomed to buying inexpensive DVDs outright from retailers like Walmart and Target instead of renting them. Combining a business that had just taken on substantial debt with an industry facing multiple threats created the perfect recipe for a slow-motion collapse. Let's pause here for a moment. This pattern of a company borrowing heavily to acquire a rival, just as the entire industry begins to crumble, appears repeatedly throughout business history. If you're interested in exploring stories like this channel breaks one down every week. Subscribe now so you don't miss the next one. Now, back to the story. By late 2007, barely 2 years after the acquisition, the combined company filed for its first bankruptcy. At that time, across all its store brands, it still operated over 3,000 locations. Nearly 600 of those closed almost immediately during the restructuring. The company emerged from that first bankruptcy in late 2008, thanks to a fresh infusion of private investment and plans to modernize its stores. Unfortunately, this recovery coincided with one of the worst moments in modern economic history. The financial crisis was wreaking havoc across the country. Consumer spending was plummeting, and streaming was no longer a distant threat, but a present reality, with new services launching one after the other. Over the following years, the company closed more than 2,400 stores to stop financial losses, shutting down locations in weaker markets to protect those that were still profitable. Unfortunately, this strategy did not yield the desired results. Revenue plummeted from around $2 billion in 2008 to just $1.4 billion the following year, marking a staggering drop of over $500 million in 1 year. Quarterly losses escalated into the tens of millions, and no amount of store closures seemed capable of addressing the underlying issue. By February 2010, with loan defaults becoming imminent, the company filed for bankruptcy protection for the second time. This time, there was no turnaround plan. Within a few months, the filing escalated into a full liquidation, meaning every remaining asset would be sold off. During this final phase, nearly 1,900 remaining rental stores closed their doors permanently. Hollywood Video, the more recognizable of the two brands, shut its last locations by the end of July 2010, many of them still adorned with the bright neon signage that had made the chain iconic 2 decades earlier. In just a few months, an entire 22-year-old company essentially vanished. The brand's founder left behind a curious but fitting footnote. During the company's peak years, he began building a vast personal estate on over 30 acres in Oregon. However, construction stalled and was ultimately abandoned. To this day, that unfinished mansion stands empty, a strange monument to how quickly all the momentum disappeared. Here's the real lesson hidden in this story. Hollywood Video didn't fail because it was poorly managed. By almost every operational standard, it outperformed its larger rival. It failed because a smaller company borrowed heavily to acquire it, just as the entire industry was about to change permanently. Being efficient in business does not shield you from bad timing, nor does it protect you from an acquisition by someone who overpays with debt they cannot sustain once the market shifts. Sometimes, even a company doing everything correctly gets dragged down by decisions that were never really in its control. So was Hollywood Video the healthier company that was ultimately brought down by someone else's misjudgment? Essentially, yes. This is perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the entire narrative. If you remember stepping into one of those neon-lit stores, or have seen any of the abandoned buildings still left standing in your town, share your experiences in the comments. And if you found it intriguing how a genuinely strong business can still be destroyed by another's poor decisions, this is exactly the type of story we cover on this channel every week. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and I'll see you in the next video. One last thing. If this story resonated with you because you've seen one of these abandoned buildings, please do me a favor and hit like before you go. It really helps more than you might think, as it encourages YouTube to show stories like this to more people who would appreciate them. If this made you curious about what happened to another brand you grew up with, feel free to drop that name in the comments. I read every single one, and there's a genuine chance your suggestion could become the next video on this channel. See you next week for another intriguing story.